Emma.
Yes, Madelyn.
What do you call it when it snowed and you were too lazy to clear out your driveway in the morning, but you gotta get somewhere, so you gotta get that snow out of the way?
I don't know. What do you call it?
Shovel Knight! Hello and welcome to Talk This.
It's dangerous to podcast alone.
I'm your, for once, Emma seems to be ahead of the punchline host, Madelyn.
I'm your disembodied voice in your head host, Emma.
And thanks for tuning in to this week's show. This week we're talking about Shovel Knight and Slitterhead.
Yes.
I came very close to saying Shovelhead and Slitter Knight there, even though I know that that's not right.
Also,
so that's
great possible titles for games, honestly.
Shovelhead.
Shovelhead?
Sick title.
Slitter Knight, I think sounds great. What does he do? I don't know.
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
So that's this week's show, the first normal podcast of 2025.
Yes. And yes, I did. I lied. I did know the answer to your joke question.
Yeah, I know. You're like, what do you call it? You're like, I don't know. Oh, you knew?
Yeah, I knew.
Originally I was like, can I come up with like a slit her head joke? But that just didn't feel funny.
Yeah.
But we'll get there. Got to start with Shovel Knight.
Yeah. Shovel Knight. On the... Actually, you do the honors. What list is it on, Madelyn?
It's on the Wikipedia Greatest Games of All Time list.
It sure is. Yes, Shovel Knight is a 2D action platformer. Came out in 2014, originally for the 3DS, the Wii U, and PC, and then to other systems eventually.
You can now play it wherever you want.
Yes. Now a classic example of Kickstarter success.
And
from
the
10 years
perils
ago.
of Kickstarter success,
Yes.
to be honest.
Yes, that too. Aren't all of them, you know?
Pretty much.
Winner of Best Independent Game at the first Game Awards.
So, the most independent game.
The most independent
Back
game.
when the Game Awards were pure. I'm just kidding.
I don't know about that.
The Game Awards weren't pure.
No, they
Anyway,
had them come and present the award for independent game this year. So, Yacht Club.
So, in Shovel Knight, you play as Shovel Knight. He's what he sounds like. He's a knight who wields a shovel.
He sure is.
And he's on a journey. Because his buddy Shield Knight... I don't know why Shield Knight got to be normal.
His girlfriend, Shield Knight.
His buddy.
His wife.
His buddy.
Sure. Okay.
Your wife can be your buddy?
Sure, yeah.
Anyway, Shield Knight needs to be rescued from the Enchantress and the Order of No Quarter.
Well, he thinks Shield Knight's dead for a while.
Yeah.
And has nightmares of failing to catch her, specifically. But then discovers, in fact, that Shield Knight is alive and needs rescuing from the Order of No Quarter.
And so you, a la Super Mario or Mega Man or whatever, work your way through pick any classic Nintendo Entertainment System game, a la that.
Well, you don't have to pick anyone, because I read a US Gamer article on the recipe of Shovel Knight and its inspirations. So, in fact, you can pick specific ones.
Well, Emma, why don't you give us the recipe?
Sure, I didn't write down the percentages, but
That's
this is in order of most to least percentage, in case you're wondering. So Zelda 2.
Okay.
In Zelda 2, he has like a stab down move. One of your main ways of interacting with the world in Shovel Knight is bouncing on your shovel, which you use for attacks as well as platforming things. They also talked about like the world, very Zelda 2 inspired, very Hyrule inspired. Then, of course, Mega Man, like you said.
Yes.
Theming stages around bosses, that sort of stuff.
And came out during a time where Mega Man was dead.
Yeah.
a time when ostensibly there was no interest in Mega Man.
Yeah.
Which,
Castlevania. Specifically, the way you can use items in Castlevania. They're not required, but you can use them to make encounters and interactions easier. The controls are also apparently the same. Up and attack to use an item. Then Dark Souls, which they said is really just more Zelda 2. They consider Dark Souls to be heavily inspired by Zelda 2. So, debate about that in the comments.
Yeah.
Then DuckTales for the NES.
Everybody was talking about DuckTales.
Apparently also a place where the downward attack comes from.
I wish that I could work into this episode the I'm on DuckTales, Larry. And now I have.
And then the last two, both of these were like 1% of the recipe. The world map and stage progression were inspired by Mario 3 and UN Squadron. So
there's your recipe.
Generally, though, they very much did go out to make like an NES game that felt like what you imagined NES games felt like, essentially. Yes. That was like the stated design goal. So
all of the reviews were pretty much like, it's an NES game, but like, good though.
Yeah. Exactly.
So you as Shovel Knight, you work your way through a bunch of platforming worlds, at the end of each one fighting one of these Order of No Quarter bosses.
Yes, they're all something knight as well.
All brothers.
Yeah, I don't think it's their last name. That would make the Shield Knight, Shovel Knight relationship a little more taboo, I think.
You said they were married.
Oh, you're right. I don't think they're actually married. I think they're just girlfriend.
They're just buddies. Dang. I got roasted. And was like, they aren't buddies. It's his wife. And then she's actually, it's not his wife.
I said girlfriend first.
Whatever.
But yeah, it's like Propeller Knight and King Knight and so on and so forth. They also made 3 additional campaigns as part of their Kickstarter stretch goals that they collected together into Shovel Knight Treasure Trove in 2019. And each of these campaigns follows one of the knights. So they're not all Shovel Knight. They're like these different knights, and some of them are like prequels on how they joined the Order of No Quarter, stuff like that.
So let's talk about that a little bit. So first of all, Shovel Knight, a Kickstarter success, although definitely for them seemingly an unexpected Kickstarter success.
Yes. Before we go into it, if I may share a last tidbit. So
please. There
was a big Game Informer article, rest in peace Game Informer. It was really hard for me to pull this up on the web archive. Because it had pages, so I had to figure out how to get it to open each
I
hate
of the
that.
Pages. I hate when it's like, it's multiple pages. You can like web archive your way to each page individually.
Yes.
Anyway, yes.
So they like smashed through like all their planned stretch goals, right?
Yeah.
When you go over, if you're unfamiliar with Kickstarter somehow.
If you've never encountered Kickstarter.
If you go over your stated thing, usually you add stretch goals to incentivize people to keep donating. And so at some point they decided that butt mode would be the next stretch goal.
I found butt mode.
Which is essentially just, it replaces various words in the script with the word butt, which you can activate through using a cheat code on the menu, if you so choose.
You can't get any achievements if you've got butt mode on, though.
Apparently, when they first did it, they didn't know what they were going to do with it. But one of them was saying, like, one day, Dan D'Angelo, our programmer, said, butt mode is in. Truly inspiring.
Do you think that laid the groundwork for them being able to do, they've, in the most recent version, it's like, oh, you can swap the pronouns. Do you think butt mode is the underlying architecture for that?
I think the gender swap came before butt mode, actually.
Ah, okay.
Because they did, like, whole, like, art asset thing changes, too, not just swapping the pronouns.
I wanted to give butt mode more credit, but so it goes.
No. You don't have to hand it to butt mode.
Gotta hand it to butt mode. Cheeky little mode. So Shovel Knight is like an emblematic example of the highs and lows of Kickstarter success.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, there's a lot of, like, Jason Schreier has done a lot of interviewing with them. There's a lot of they've talked a lot about what this process was like for them and openly about the development process. But yes, their original goal was to crowdfund $75,000, which is so silly, right? When you think about it, this was a team of several people, and they were like, we're going to make a game on $75,000.
Well, I feel like we talk about this every time. Your Kickstarter money is not, you never fund, like, the whole development of a game unless, like, it's, like, just you. Usually it's,
That's
like,
true.
a marketing thing, and you can use that to get more money.
Correct. But unfortunately, that $75,000 goal and what it did for the stretch goals probably put them in a situation that was somewhat untenable.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the first goal being that low. So they had a really big showing at PAX East. Shout out to PAX East.
Yep. We
should probably get our passes.
Probably.
And that led to them raising over $300,000. So quadrupling their goal. And they had stretch goals, like, throughout that way, but if they'd gotten to $250,000, they'd make 3 of the villain boss knights playable characters, right? So, okay, that's a lot, but, you know, not terrible. You could just, like, swap them in, maybe, or not do anything too ambitious. And unfortunately, these guys seem to like making games.
Always the fly in the ointment, enjoying things, you know?
Yeah, they, like, had ideas.
Having ideas.
And that's bad. And, like, for context, right? Like, this was, like, a pretty small team. I mean, it sounds like it was really only, like, a dozen people working on it at the most throughout much of this process. And, like, they've talked about how... there was an interview about, like, the pre-PAX East time where they were like, we sort of didn't think the demo was going to be finished, so we thought we might have to just, like, put Mario up there and talk about the game to people and hope that went okay. They were like, we just barely finished the demo. But, so yeah, because they liked making games, they were like, oh, you know what? Instead of just, like, making these other characters playable, palette swap, whatever, why don't we make full new DLC for them?
Yep.
That'll be, like, free. And in addition to that, why don't we give them totally new sets of abilities and how they traverse the environment and how they feel the control? And let's do that with Plague Knight. And let's do all sorts of other fun things and challenges and write a whole new story for Plague Knight. Uh-oh. Games are hard to make. So this led to, like, a super burnout period, and also because they were creating this DLC as part of a tie-in for a physical release of Shovel Knight, they didn't have, I mean, not that you ever have entire flexibility of pushing back a launch if you've got a publisher or whatever involved, I'm sure, right? Mm-hmm. But they had even less flexibility to push back when this launched because they were stuck on, like, a timeline for the physical release. So that meant that they, like, crunched themselves to death, basically. And then, unfortunately, though, they had committed to 3 of these. And by making this one that was so high effort, they had set a standard for what these were that was going to be hard to walk back.
Yep.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh. So then they're like, well, okay, like, that was hard. We really can't do that again. Like, let's be smarter about this time. This was dumb. We know we've got these other 2 guys. We're going to do Spectre Knight. We're going to do King Knight. And, like, can we be smarter about this time and try to, like, put them, even though they'll have different abilities, in, like, the same set of levels, right? Like, they might have their own story, but surely we can save ourselves some assets and put them in the same set of levels. Unfortunately, because they gave Spectre Knight, like, different abilities of how to move, partially as a response to Plague Knight being kind of, like, clunky, heavy, not everybody loved that, they made those levels, and they were like, wait a minute, King Knight can't get through these.
Amazing how that works, yeah.
They were like, that's crazy that we made challenging traversal specifically around a new set of skills that a character with another new set of skills doesn't make sense to travel them.
They should have learned from Trine and just been like, he can make 5 blocks.
They should have made, yeah, exactly. Fine time for Trine time. Fortunately, though, for King Knight, Shovel Knight, I keep trying to, there can't be Shovel Knight and Hollow Knight.
Wow, do you think that's extended universe lore?
Maybe.
Do you think
Is he a
that's
brother?
why Silk Song's taking so long to come out? Because it's actually the Shovel Knight sequel that they've announced?
It could be. Wouldn't that be crazy?
Wow, we've cracked it.
Somebody just shot me from the window. So fortunately, though, for them, for the final, the King Knight, the last DLC build, Shovel Knight was a launch title for Nintendo Switch, so they were like suddenly swimming in money. I mean, it had always been a commercial success, but it sounds like the Nintendo Switch of it all took them to a new level of commercial success. Mm-hmm. So they didn't have to rush that last one. There wasn't like money versions of it hanging on it.
Yes, they made a whole card game mini game for the last one I was reading about, called Joustus.
Gotta have a card game mini game.
Yeah. No, I was reading an Inverse article, just like retrospecting on Shovel Knight by Will of Roe. And they were like Triple Triad in Final Fantasy VIII. Just like that.
Yeah.
Like, wow, okay, sure. We love a card game.
That might be as I'm saying that, I feel like that might be my next side quest.
Card games in video games?
Card games and games.
Card games and games? That's a good one.
So, we'll see if I change my mind.
Look a little more into Joustus then.
Yeah. Well, it'll give me an excuse to play a lot of Queen's Blood.
That too.
Anyway. So that's the dangers of Kickstarter, is that this team really seemed like they needed someone who was a little bit more of a producer than they had at some point.
That's the problem with
process.
indies a little bit all the time.
Yeah. It's the perils of getting excited about things and not thinking about what that means for you. A lot of this reporting that I'm reading from is from like conversations they had with Jason Schreier at various points. And they talked to him seemingly about like, we did not really expect even to be spending 4 years of our lives on Shovel Knight, let alone like 8 years.
Yeah. No, it's you look at Yacht Club's website and it is like all Shovel Knight.
Yeah.
They did a Kickstarter and have been working steadily on a game called Mina the Hollower since like 2022, I think. But that's like their first non-Shovel Knight game beyond like I think maybe they had one other before they did Shovel Knight. Maybe.
Well, there's a bunch of Shovel Knight spin-offs too.
Yes,
they made,
that's
like,
what I'm saying. Yeah.
They made Bejeweled Shovel Knight. They made roguelike Shovel-like blah 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 blah. I can't even say it. Roguelike Shovel Knight. Say that 5 times fast. So it's the curse of success, right? And it's the curse of success in creating yourself like a really successful mascot character too.
Yeah. I mean, they're still making it. Like I said, they announced this summer. They're working on Shovel Knight, a game that'll bring it into a whole new dimension with a little GIF with 3-dimensional objects in it. So, 3D Shovel Knight.
It's apparently already 3D, by the way.
Well, yes. Yeah.
Emma says, well, yes, because she's, smart, but I thought it was neat.
It is neat, yeah.
It apparently made the porting much easier for them.
That makes sense to me.
Another just Kickstarter thing that they did is they sold a bag of dirt.
Yeah, that makes sense too.
I thought this was really funny. They said they sold it for $100, and they were worried about. They were like, "Well, it's probably difficult to ship like organic material internationally. We probably just can't scoop dirt,
and
mail it to France." So they had to like buy like clean sand, basically. Which I have to imagine someone was like, man, this was a fun joke that we put in here, and now we are shipping like thousands of boxes of sand, no doubt.
I imagine someone bought it, was like, this was a fun joke to buy, but now I'm getting a box of sand in the mail.
Yeah. So, Kickstarter, man. It's crazy.
Some development tips. This Game Informer interview with Nick Wozniak and Sean Velasco was very fun to read. But apparently when they first started development, they had a more like direct Mario thing going on. Shield Knight was originally called Princess MacGuffin internally. So,
nice.
very direct.
Mm-hmm.
And they had like they hadn't really thought about it other than we want to make a game about a knight and he runs around. And then Velasco says it was supposed to be like he has a shovel and at the end you have to bury your wife.
No.
Which I'm glad they didn't do that, but would have been extremely 10 years ago indie of them, you know?
Oh, that's so limbo. Shovelhead could do that.
Yeah, exactly.
That's crazy.
They also just talked a little bit about, like I said, their stated design goal was, like, we want this to be really NES-y. And so a lot of, like, the changes and feedback that they had to make was, like, one of the pieces of feedback they gave, Velasco said, I would never say that a game that I've worked on before, like, that one just looks too animated. And so he talks about, like, just taking, doing, like, there was a 6-frame animation for a dragon, and they just took out half the frames. And they had some exceptions, like Spectre Knight was apparently a bit of an exception, that he had a very elaborate cloak animation. But just, like, generally looking at everything they did and was like, how can we make this look older?
That's crazy. I did think it was interesting. Do you think they could do this now, or would this be like, is this now illegal, having exclusive boss battles for different systems?
I think it'd be illegal.
Right?
Yeah, I think the game police would come for you. By which I mean the fans.
Yeah.
The gamers.
Because, yeah, on PlayStation you could fight Kratos, and on Xbox you could fight Battletoads.
Oh, well, that's fun. If it's, like, exclusive characters, I do feel like maybe you could still do that.
The law's the law, Emma.
But you really do have to, you would have to be really careful to pick, like, equivalently iconic characters.
Yeah, it can't be Mario.
Yeah. Well, it's like how, like, for a while, like, Spider-Man in Marvel games could only be on Sony systems.
Yeah. So crazy. I can't believe I haven't played this because it has local co-op.
Does it?
Yeah.
Some of them?
Yeah.
Cool.
So one day, maybe.
Yeah. Put that on the list.
But everybody loves Shovel Knight. You know, it's another one of those games where it's interesting now to be like, well, would this ever break out now? You know?
It's always interesting to think about that in, like, yes, I could totally see it breaking out, but
yeah,
it just, like, you know, in the crapshoot. I saw some graph recently that was like the amount that game releases have just absolutely skyrocketed on Steam per year. Like, it's at, like, a factor of, like, some insane amount more than when Steam first came out.
Yeah.
So it's just like there's so many more games now, you know, that with the Shovel Knight really make it.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like, obviously it's good. Everyone thinks it's good, and the way that it's good is in ways that are, you know, harkening back to an older era of
I
games.
just mean, I feel like whether, like, if it breaks out, it's probably good, but if your game is good, that doesn't mean it's necessarily guaranteed to break out.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. Is I feel like we probably walk by when we go to PAX like a dozen games that are shovel-like.
Yeah.
Shovel-like. I can't say the name of this. That are shovel-likes.
Yeah.
And I'm sure, you know, at least a few of those games are probably as good as Shovel Knight.
Yeah.
And, but like, no way, right?
Sure, yeah.
No way would going to PAX East do anything for you like this now.
Yeah.
Sorry, PAX East.
I'm not.
Yeah, bring back bills.
Bring back merchandise.
Where's the merch? Where's the soda?
Let me spend things. Let me spend my money on overpriced soda.
Please. We might have done it last year.
I know. We almost had us after like 5 years.
If they aren't back, I'm going to flip a table.
Well, are we ready to move on?
Yeah, let's slither on. Or slitter on, I guess.
Yeah, let's slitter on. I don't like that. I don't love it.
Slitterhead. It's a 2024 horror, sort of-ish, action-adventure from Bokeh Game Studio for the PlayStations, the Xboxes, and Windows, and it came out in November.
Yes, it was directed by... What's his first name? Toyama. Keiichiro Toyama, who was previously at Sony Japan Studio. He and some others left very shortly before Sony closed it to found this game studio. Seems to be mostly by the Sean Layden, the CEO at the time, left in 2019, and apparently they started thinking like, well, things are probably going to start changing here, so maybe we should leave. Toyama also says that he had a lot of talks with Fumito Ueda, who was also at Japan Studio, but technically left 2011, but did one last game with them and founded his own studio. So they saw the writing on the wall before it closed a year beforehand and went and founded Bokeh so that they could continue making games that they actually wanted to make.
Smart.
Yeah, Toyama worked on the first Silent Hill, the Siren series, which we've talked about on the show before, and Gravity Rush 1 and 2, which I don't think we've talked about on the show. I don't think they're either old or new enough to have been talked about. I'm not sure, though. It might have been really early when Gravity Rush 2 came out.
I am feeling like we did talk about Gravity Rush, but I could be wrong.
I think it might have been a really early episode if we did.
So it's as if we didn't talk about it.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, this is their first game that they have released. Did you play this?
What?
Did you play this?
No, the timing of the podcast recording this week, which I know is predictably Sunday at noon.
I know, yes.
has meant that I did not play it.
Well, I have played it, so...
The concert last night was great, by the way.
Yeah, we loved the concert last night. We didn't the Final Fantasy concert, not the Slitterhead concert. I would go to a Slitterhead concert.
Yeah?
It's got Akira Yamaoka on the soundtrack, and he's actually trying on this one, so It's pretty good.
So yeah, in Slitterhead, you're in... It's not called Kowloon. It's
I know. I skimmed the Wikipedia page, and it claims it's set in Kowloon, but no, it's called Kowloon.
Yeah.
Which is just a portmanteau of Kowloon and Hong Kong, which Kowloon was part of Hong Kong, I think, but it's meant to just evoke sort of Hong Kong more generally as well.
Although at least one kind of article about it I read was wow, this is a really realistic Kowloon simulator. I'm playing this as a walking sim for my hometown. Which I was that's fun. So you're there in the 90s, and Slitterheads are getting into people's brains and taking over and killing them.
Yeah.
Eating their brains. And you're Hyoki, and you're a spirit. You're a worm guy, little worm.
Is he a worm?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And you don't really know what you are, what your deal is, but you got to kill the Slitterheads.
Yes. When you start the game, you have possessed a dog, and you slowly remember how you're able to, like, jump from conscious being to conscious being, and control them in various ways, as well as your mission to defeat the Slitterheads. You also, as you are going about your mission, meet characters called rarities that are humans that more naturally attune to Hyoki, or night owl is the thing in English, I think. It's like abilities, and so they have like special sort of blood abilities that they can use to take on the Slitterheads, and are generally more tough than a regular civilian body that you might be possessing.
They're cool people.
Yes, your first rarity is who names you Nighthead Hyoki. It's not, you don't really know anything about yourself, at least at the beginning. So
this game is so interesting.
Yes.
Because, wow, are the reviews mixed.
Yes. Having played it for about 2 to 3 hours at this point, I totally get why they are mixed.
Dig into that, wiggle into that for me a little.
It definitely feels like a game that's ambition somewhat outstrips its resources, which can be kind of a Toyama staple from having talked about Siren. It's also kind of weirdly toned. They've talked about, like, drawing from a lot of, like, seinen manga in terms of tone, so it's more sort of action-y rather than, like, really, like, more intense horror like Silent Hill 1 or Siren would be. And so, like, when I'm playing it, I'm like, wow, this is very Gravity Rush, which is really funny to think in, like, a horror game, right?
Yeah.
And it's also just, like, a little finicky to play and a little weird and off at points. Like, there are these very strange, like, you can talk with each of your rarities between missions, and they're just, like, these very strange things where there's, like, the character's, like, doing something in the background, and there's also, like, a superimposed thing of their face making expressions, and they're not totally voiced, there's just grunts, which, like, creates this extremely sort of eerie, off-putting effect, where I can see someone going to that and being like, this is super weird, I can't do this. But also, if you get into it, it's quite fun, the moment-to-moment gameplay of it. It feels like they're making a game that they just want to make, you know? And that can be either interesting to get into or can lead to it being like, no, this is not.
Well, I think that's what's really tricky about it is several of the reviews I read made reference in both positive and negative ways to the game feeling like it was a PS3 game. And that's both sometimes like a knock on, well, it was weird. I read 2 reviews back to back. One was like the gamer review was very much like, it's cool that this is a PS3 game. And whatever the one was that I read after that, I don't remember, was like, this is kind of PS3. So, you know, but that calls to a lot of things, and it also speaks to the fact that we as a gamer society don't seem ready for the resurgence of the PS3. And maybe we will never be.
It's coming.
Is it, though? Here's the thing. Here's my thing about that.
Everything comes back around.
I know, but I'm worried that PS3 is too close, right? It's like what we're doing now, but worse, mostly. And I feel like, I don't know if we're ever going to be ready to accept that. But, you know, for this game, it's very much like, okay, the graphics don't look very good, right? I mean, they do. There are certain elements of the graphics that don't look like they have a lot of money behind them.
Yes. Like, I don't know. Like, I feel like I was talking about this when I was playing Final Fantasy 13, but I remember playing that and being like, graphics didn't ever need to look any better than this, honestly.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how I feel about the way Slitterhead looks, also.
Sure, and that's fair. And one of the reviews was like, yeah, like, good, let's spend less money. But also, it both in service of kind of like a time loop thing that has worked in the game, but obviously that's like a budgetary measure as well, reuses a lot of assets kind of over and over and over again, which I will be curious if you continue to play the game, how you start to feel about that. You know, this game is about 13 to 15 hours long. I'll be curious how you start to feel about that at hour 10.
Yeah.
If it all starts to feel a little repetitive.
I have gotten a couple of repeat, they're like called like second loop missions, right? I'm not playing the exact same mission again. I'm doing it differently because I have different rarities available to me or different goals within that level space. So,
which is a cool way to save time and money, but doesn't seem to have been 100% effective in execution. But even more than that, a lot of the like discussion around this game is about how, in many ways, it feels out of a different era of game development that is hard to capture now. These sort of, I mean, they pop up in our old games periodically now. These games that are trying to do something sort of weird and ambitious, and they don't have real AAA budgets behind them. These kind of mid-budget, like funky, weird games that we just see less of now. And the response to Slitterhead sort of underscores why, because we just can't sustain a game that's going to get a 5 on IGN anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, I was reading a little bit about, like, the closure of Japan Studio around doing research for this game. And Toyama said, at least in an interview, that, like, around the time of the CEO change, there was starting to be increasing pressure at Japan Studio for, like, doing, like, the high-budget Sony brand sort of games, which is just not really what Japan Studio has ever done, right? If you look at, like, their oeuvre over the years, it's, like, these sort of strange, like, weird, out-of-step, mid-budget, not, like, blockbuster selling games, but that are enduring in people's memories at the same time. And so a lot of people were leaving Japan Studio because they didn't really want to do that, and eventually they decided to close it because that's not the type of game that Sony was interested in making anymore, essentially.
Boo.
But it does, yeah, you're right, it does speak to, like, when you're looking at, like, the AAA space, you're not getting these sorts of games out of that because that's that's not the brand anymore.
Yeah. You know who was really excited about this game?
Who?
The fake guy who works at Zombie Vice.
He's not I'm sure he's a real man.
Okay.
They just have him locked in a basement and he's not allowed to leave.
Yeah. I want to read a quote from one of his things about it.
Okay.
He goes, "So for the longest time, I was under the impression Slitterhead would be a horror game with a slower, terrifying pace. Like, ... you know, Silent Hill. I was hyped for that too. Then the years went on. The gameplay clips began to emerge. I can say the game is, a little more wacky than I was led to believe.
Let this guy free.
I'm here for it."
Let this man be free.
Oh, the tone of all of it is like this. There's another one where he's like, it's a 3 out of 10 game. Heck yeah.
Yeah, I also, like, the original Silent Hill has, like, pterodactyls as enemies, I feel like I should say. So, like, I guess so. Is it scary? Is it a really slow-paced, scary game? I'm not sure. I feel like, I know Toyama didn't work on Silent Hill 2, but there are some enemies that, like, are, like, little worms that wiggle around on the ground, essentially. And it reminds me of, there's some enemies in Silent Hill 2 that they wiggle, little people that wiggle around at the ground on you. So... little wiggly guys.
Little wiggly dudes.
Saying. They carried over saying. The little wiggly dudes. Bouquet also did like lots of dev diaries on their YouTube channel with all the main creative staff and like Q&As, and there's one of them going to Hong Kong and Kowloon and like taking photos and stuff that are all like very interesting to read about these various people's like histories and their work on the project as well, that I quite liked watching. They also have a couple of ones like Golden Hour is what they call them, where they have other like famous Japanese developers just come in and shoot the crap for like 20 minutes each, that are also very fun to watch. So yeah, just, you know, I said I'm like 3 to 4 hours in. I just got rarity number 2 and 3. You just have Julie is your first rarity for a while. So there's Julie, who appears to be like a shop clerk girl, Anita, who is a sex worker, and Alex, who is introduced as like a edgy motorcyclist, and then you cut to his like first conversation. He's actually a hot doctor. So
who knew?
It's very I was very disorienting that we've only seen him before with his like helmet on. And then like you cut to his first conversation, he's got a lab coat and glasses. He also has a dragon tattoo like down his neck. So, Yakuza doctor? It's possible.
Ooh.
In these videos, they talked a little bit about being inspired by, rather obviously, Wong Kar-wai and Fruit Chan, I guess would be how you say it, who are both, I think they're both Hong Kong filmmakers, right?
I think, well, I'm not an expert, but that seems plausible to me.
I think I saw something that was like one of the first shots in Slitterhead is like a homage to Fallen Angels by Wong Kar-wai. So very on its sleeve there. But I'm really enjoying it. Like I've said, the main gameplay is like when you fight a Slitterhead, you're constantly possessing different people around it. So there's like various civilians that you can possess that have limited like blood powers that you can use. So you might jump into civilian, have them use War Cry to distract some of the Slitterheads, and then jump back into your rarity and attack the Slitterheads while their backs are turns. They also have like special blood abilities that they can use. So now that I have a few, pairing up Julie and Alex is pretty good, because Alex is all about using all of his blood, and then Julie is all about restoring people's blood. So you can have Alex like spam his blood shotgun and blood gravity field. And then you can switch to Julie and she can use her revive skill to give him all his blood back, essentially. And as you switch, like, you get a small power boost the first time you switch to them, so they get an extra combo and do a little bit more damage. So it encourages you to be like constantly switching between the bodies that you have available. So that's why it feels very Gravity Rush, I guess. Yeah. Because you go into like possession mode and then shoot to the next person you're possessing in a way that feels kind of like when you're shifting gravity as Kat in Gravity Rush. It has that same sort of momentum feeling to it that really brought me back to that.
So Emma's team Slitterhead.
So far, I mean, I feel like even if it starts wearing out its welcome by the end, it's still going to be a game that I have appreciated playing more than like Unicorn Overlord. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Not Vanillaware is relatively independent too, so that's good, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, I do. Unicorn Overlord has been getting a beating on the show.
It's just on my mind.
A punching bag.
But no, I think that these sorts of independent ventures with people who have strong visions is nice. And I think that it's nice to support those sorts of strong visions, even if they're compromised in some ways.
Are we ready to mash?
Yeah, I guess so.
Slitter Knight.
There are these horrifying monsters in the night that have shovels coming out of their heads.
Yeah.
That is scary.
There's something with, like, shovels and worms, I feel like.
I can imagine the character design now of, like, the head split down the middle and there's just, like, a shovel.
Yeah.
You could even have, like, spades and other digging implements. Trowels.
Yep.
Yeah, they could be, like, size-based. Right? Like, the big bosses are, like, bulldozers.
That could be neat. The bulldozer boss idea is a great idea.
And then the normal ones are sort of shovel-headed. And then you have, like, trowels and, whatever, spades, the other one I said.
Yeah.
Put your digging implement of choice here. We do some research. We do some intense
we would research into
research
digging implements for sure.
on different digging implements throughout history. Right?
Yeah. I don't really know how I will beat that. I'm just...
I feel like the other way around is like Hollow Knight.
Yeah, pretty much. And that already exists.
That does already. Well, we could just make Silksong faster.
That seems good. That seems like what everyone's waiting for. Yeah, I'm like trying to think of like, oh, is there anywhere you could like jump into different, like you could do a platformer where like the way you platform is by like jumping from like like kind of like changing consciousnesses.
That is kind of how Slitterhead is. You do like platforming up and down because it's a very vertical city.
Yeah, but like a real platformer.
Yeah, I know. I'm just saying like, I think, yeah, you could do something with that.
So like that's something. But beyond that, kind of tough. I think yours is a better idea. I like the idea of your trowel enemies.
I feel like you could lean it even like, you know, not that Slitterhead is like intense horror already, right? It's very like action movie, like seinen manga, like they said thing. But I feel like you'd lean it even goofier, right, to more of the Shovel Knight side of things.
Mm-hmm.
Make it more like a, not like a parody, but like a sort of B-movie type vibe, you know?
Mm-hmm. I dig that.
What's the movie where he's like, it's gonna eat me? It ate her, and now it's gonna eat me.
It's going to eat me! And it ate her, and it's gonna eat me too! Oh my god!
What
it's Troll 2. Troll 2.
What is it?
Troll 2.
Troll 2? Troll 2? Is that what it's called?
Almost sure.
Well,
yeah.
like that.
Yeah, like Troll 2.
Okay.
The second troll. I'm looking at his face.
Okay. That doesn't sound familiar at all. That's all that I was responding to, but I believe you.
It's correct. So
yes.
Sorry.
I started picturing the Trolls dolls.
No.
Yeah.
Not that.
Yeah. But no, like we would try to capture that sort of vibe, you know.
I think that's you've come up with all the good ideas here. I've been like
also something fun, like dig in the grave. Like they were saying, you have a shovel and then you dig your wife's grave. But
how about at the end you dig your wife's grave? Your buddy's grave.
Your buddy's grave, right? Yeah.
I think we've got some plausible options here.
Yeah.
Listeners, would you love me if I was a worm? How many more pieces of Shovel Knight DLC would you like to see? If you were running a Kickstarter, would you be able to keep your scope from creeping? If you have thoughts on this or anything else we talked about this week, or if you think that you can say roguelike Shovel Knight, I can't even say it once, 5 times fast, Hit us up on social media. We're on Facebook, Blue Sky, Instagram, and YouTube at Talk This Podcast. You can also visit our website, www.talkthispodcast.com, where you can read all about the show, check out the games in the hat, and read our blog featuring long-running series Clickbait Boyfriend and Split Screen, plus a bunch of more recent blogs from Emma. But most importantly, if you enjoy the show, you ought to subscribe. We're on Apple Podcasts, YouTube Podcasts, TuneIn, Spotify, Pandora Podcasts, online and on the app, Overcast, Pocket Casts, wherever you can find podcasts. Subscribe to Talk This. Where even are we in the side quest cycle?
It's our 6 weeks in gaming next time.
Right, of course it is. So yes, look forward to me talking up. Let's see if I can finish Final Fantasy by then.
We'll see.
We are in the desert with Barrett.
Oh ho.
So, well, actually, I'm probably further than that now. But
what was your thoughts on the... Well, we'll talk about this next week.
It.
Never mind. Yeah.
Yeah. So stay tuned for that. But that's it for this week's show. Emma, sign us off.
I have to pick the games.
Oh,
no?
Shoot. That's not it for this week's show. I always do this.
We're out of practice because it's been 3 weeks.
I know. I've totally forgotten.
For our old game, we'll be talking about Loco Roco. And for our new game, we'll be talking about Saga Emerald Beyond.
So look forward to that in 2 weeks. That's this week's show.
Yeah.
Emma, sign us off.
This week, I hope... I'm not going to say that one. This week, I hope that you have all the digging implements you could possibly need.